press and play on another Pay Me No Mind sports and entertainment afternoon Wood check in. My name is Wood. Please, if you want to hear some discussions on some other issues, more in depth from a different angle, feel free to check out my It's Always Personal podcast, which is out there on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. That's enough. If you like the way any of the information is being presented, broken down, reviewed, preview, recapped, whatever, hit the like button, weigh in with a comment if you have a thought on it. I'm gonna talk about this more on an It's Always Personal episode, but some of the constant complaining, we see this at the end of every NFL season, and how racist the NFL is, or how unfair its hiring practices are, or just the regular complaints. Once the regular season is over, and we see the fallout from what's coined as Black Monday, when the coaches start getting fired. And this year's round of firing left us with only one black head coach in Mike Tomlin, who has never had a losing season in his 15 years as head coach. And then, the other number that gets thrown out there is that, this is unacceptable in a league that is 69 to 70% black. And, I think some of the criticism I just talked about Dr. Boyce Watkins here on YouTube. And, he did a series of videos over the last week and a half to 2 weeks about the issues in the NFL. And some of these individuals who keep running out here with these same arguments, they don't even know what the hell they're talking about. All they do is point to the lowest hanging fruit. They just point to the simplest argument that they can make, and stir you up or stir their people up to be mad at the NFL. Is the NFL unfair? Probably. Could it do better? Probably. But some of this constant criticism, in my opinion, undermines the individuals that are actually doing the work. Everybody can't sit back and profit from talking about racial shit. Everybody just can't be on the sidelines talking about what's not happening. Some people actually have to be in the fight. And so when you want to just throw out here that there's only one black coach for 32 teams, it's 69 to 70%, black players, I get that. But I also would like to know, in the last 20 to 25 years, how many position coaches are black? What's the numbers there? I mean, you just can't pop out and be an NFL coach. I think we're in a time right now where I'm increasingly seeing more individuals, more black players who in the last 5 to 10 years I saw in helmets. Now I'm starting to see them on the sideline with ball caps on, headsets, and clipboards or the Microsoft Edge things. And we have a lot of black guys, a lot of black men who are involved with game planning, offensive and defensive coordinating. They're the coach of the linebacker crew, the coach of the wide receiving core. I didn't see that in years past. A lot of players retired from the NFL and just disappeared, just went on to do whatever. Now I'm seeing a lot of guys back on the sidelines. Another key stat that I would like to be thrown out there. How many black coaches are not going to teams before they get there where the team had a winning record? A lot of these coaches are inhabiting bad teams. And yes, they're not given, the full 4 to 5 years to turn these situations around. But a lot of these teams are horrible that they get. So they're kind of set up for failure. But let's not forget that Vance Joseph, I believe, was brought in to run to be the head coach for the Denver Broncos. Perfect case in point, I think it was Raheem Morris, I think is his last name. He went to the Buccaneers, but he didn't get this version of the Buccaneers. He didn't get this loaded version of the Buccaneers. He had a much different Buccaneer team that was more in line with the Bucs that we used to know when they were bums. Damn, I can't think of the one defensive coordinator that went to the Jets. The New York Jets, a horrible franchise in most years. Damn, I can't think of the defensive coordinator's name. But that brother, he went to the Jets. The Steve Wilkes cat. He didn't have this version of the Arizona Cardinals. He had the 1 year, maybe that was the year where they drafted Josh Rosen or the Rosen kid who never even got to play. Wilkes only had one season. We know the other brother, the older gentleman, I knew I was going to forget his name, Ted Cottrell or whatever, went up to Detroit. He was with the Lions. Nobody is winning with the Lions. And then let's not forget, I fell out of my chair when I really looked into this and realized, because Mike Tomlin is my favorite coach in the league. The Steelers aren't, my go-to team, but I'm a huge fan of Coach Tomlin. But I was blown away when I realized this. Coach Tomlin was only a defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. I don't even know if he was the D coordinator. He was a part of the Minnesota Vikings coaching staff for one season after coming up from being a collegiate coach. He was only on that staff for 1 year before the Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the most popular, one of the top 3-5 franchises in all of football, they hired him to be their head coach with no NFL coaching experience, head coaching experience, and then minimal time at the pro level. And 2 years later, yes, he won a Super Bowl. Some people would say that he did that with Coach Cowher's team. I don't know. But we're really getting ready to see how good Coach is when we look at this, when we see what he does having to start over at quarterback. And like I said, that's my guy. I love Coach Tomlin, one of my favorite communicators in the league. But they haven't addressed bringing in a successor to Big Ben. And now this is going to be the year where they have to. Now, he could easily solve this because he could bring in a Russell Wilson or maybe Rodgers if that situation doesn't get better. They could go after Carr if they wanted to. They can go the free agent based on the reputation of the Steelers. They don't have to go to the draft necessarily to bring in somebody. I think earlier in the year, there was a comment made by Aaron Rodgers, like he was keeping an eye on, the quarterback spot possibly being open over in Pittsburgh. And I think said something either favorable about Coach Tomlin or about the organization, something. But a move could be made there. But again, a lot of these black coaches go to horrible franchises to begin with. This brother down in Cully that went to Houston Texans. I mean, they bring you in and the all-pro quarterback that's sitting here has 22 sexual assault allegations pending against him. So you don't even get your best player. That was the whole reason in taking that job. But you don't get that guy, and then the rest of the roster is in shambles. What was the dude gonna be able to do with that team? I know back in the day, Leslie Frazier, I want to say, took over Minnesota. Not one of the worst teams in the league, but like year in and year out, they're kind of a middle of the pack team. And he didn't last long there. Anthony Lynn was with the Chargers. Again, a middle of the pack team, and he had my man Phillip Rivers throwing away games left and right. And then he's out of there before they bring in Herbert, the Herbert kid. So I'm just saying, with some of these people that get on here and talk about racial matters and this and that, they don't really give you all of the stats, but they get you excited about this stuff. Another thing that I was trying to think if there was one other thing. Oh, another interesting number, and I know this number isn't gonna be great, but how many black coaches do get a second head coaching job? Again, I know that one is not gonna be one that would suggest that things are going okay in the NFL along this topic. But again, it's something that I would be interested to know as we're looking at all of the different categories that you would want to talk about this on. Then another thing that I found interesting about a week and a half ago, they had an article on ESPN about what goes into the interview process to be an NFL head coach. And this is another thing that I think is important because with the Rooney Rule, at least brothers do have a chance to interview. And I think it's important for you to see what that process involves. Even if you don't get selected for the job, even if it's a foregone conclusion that they're going with another dude, some white candidate that they really want, I get it. But I think it's highly beneficial to be in that room and to see the questions that they hit you with. Because one of the things this article was talking about was it's a firm out there it's one of the sports agencies that represents head coaches, and they actually part of their business is they prepare their coaching candidates to go through this process, and so the article was talking about some of these interviews last for 2 and 3 hours. Some of them last for 8 hours. And, if you think about it, let me know, we watch some of these former players in the media for years and years while they're playing. And if this person really isn't a good communicator the whole time that we watch them as a player, how do you have any confidence that they can go over here in an 8-hour interview and effectively convince a front office or ownership group that I'm the man that you can entrust your team to? So that's another thing to consider. Like, an NFL coach is probably one of the, it's this multi-billion-dollar brand or entity, organization. But the head coach is really, between the head coach and the quarterback, that's the face of that organization to the rest of the world. And you got to be on your game to go in there and get that job. That's why I said I'm such a fan of Mike Tomlin, because I can watch this brother in his interviews, in his post-game interviews, even after bad losses. I can watch Coach Tomlin, and that brother can talk about anything. He can put a spin on whatever situation. He can address all the topics. He's a very thoughtful brother. I can see how he went in there back in the day and came out with that job at 30, 34 years old or whatever, with no previous head coaching experience in the NFL. I can completely see that. It's some of these guys season to season who get passed over. I couldn't jump on YouTube and with all of what I know, I can't sit here and be too adamant about why so-and-so isn't getting hired. Some of the black coaches that I've seen throughout the years, the ones who did have jobs, a lot of them really, in my opinion, you own a shitty team, you have ugly losses, your roster is in bad shape, and then you go out here after an ugly loss, and I haven't seen a lot of these guys always be able to take command of the situation and convincingly talk about what's going on, how we're going to fix things, and how I will get this team prepared, next week. A lot of these guys just go up here and it's like standing in front of a firing squad. I think that's another thing to consider. So then there was a last point I wanted to make before I get on off of here. So another situation I saw last weekend, again, with people going out here making points along this racial shit and getting people charged up about shit, but they really don't know what the hell they're talking about. But it's like I said, it's extremely anybody who doesn't even watch the NFL, who doesn't even know anything about the history or the recent history of the NFL or the season, is the week-to-week stuff that's happening in the league. Anybody could just look at 70% of the players are black, one head coach is black, and you could go make an argument, or you could say that you can make an argument about the two black coaches that were fired, in Flores and Cully, but it's not like it's not other details there that might, I wouldn't say justify, but at least inform people why a decision was made. And I just think, so last week, Tiffany Cross comes on MSNBC on Saturday mornings. And she opens up this story. She goes to do her report on the lack of fairness in the NFL and the hiring practices. And then she starts the whole segment with, I don't know much about the NFL. Well, why the hell are you on here talking about it then? Why are you trying to make such a strong argument about something that you're not even invested in? You don't even care. All you saw was 70% black players, one black coach, and then you go make your point. Now she brings Howard Bryant in, who used to work at ESPN, and that was her expert on the subject matter. But she didn't even really give any time to the segment to really talk through anything, and she didn't really ask the man any questions to really get a full 360 look at the situation. So her whole reporting on the matter was trash, in all honesty. But again, she just throws it out here. Something here isn't fair. I don't know what it is, and I don't know any of the details or 10 of the reasons why it's not fair, but I just see these two things right here. 70% of the players are black. Only one black head coach out of 32 teams. Okay. I mean, did you take, anyway. Now, conversely, I just watched this other cat who's not a sports writer, who's not a sports journalist. His name is Jonathan Lemire. He's a political guy. On the Morning Joe show, they often get into sports talk as part of their around the desk conversation. And Lemire talked through, I've heard Lemire talk about baseball before with the Red Sox and the Yankees because it's located on the East Coast. The show is filmed on the East Coast. And then, they focus on DC. But Jonathan Lemire, not a sports guy, he goes to talk about the NFL and knowledgeably talks about all of the teams in the bracket remaining in the playoffs. He knows the quarterback names. What's good, man? DJ Matrix TV. Lemire knows the quarterback names, key injuries, head coach records. Jonathan Lemire freestyles on football for damn near 5 minutes. And I know that I'm listening to somebody who knows what he's talking about. Now, he didn't weigh in on a black coaching situation and all of that type of stuff. But I'm just saying, when I listen to Tiffany Cross and you want to talk about racism in the NFL and you start your segment on, I don't know nothing about the NFL. All your reporting is invalidated after that. Like, I don't want to hear nothing from you. You're only talking about this to get to your main point that you always talk about. But you clearly haven't done any kind of research. You don't know the history of any of these teams. You don't know how many total black coaches have been hired throughout the years. You don't know the collective record of black coaches compared to white coaches. You can't tell me how many black coaches, if it's a 4-year deal or a 5-year deal, you can't tell me how many black coaches make it to their 3rd year or their 4th year. What details are you giving me to run with the fact that you believe the NFL is racist just because it's only one black coach? I get that. But again, I don't know. I don't remember the year when black players started popping up in the NFL. Maybe that was the 50s or something, or maybe the 60s or whatever. I don't remember. But just common sense would tell me enough players would have to come through the ranks for there to be enough former players for some of those players to begin trying to enter the coaching ranks. And then you would have to be in the coaching ranks for X amount of years before you have enough experience to be considered for a head coaching job. Like, it's a timeline in there where you could reasonably expect things to pick up in that area. One other thing, before I get out of here, I got to get ready to go. Deion Sanders. I know a lot of people want to point to right now that, Deion is down here coaching at Jackson State, and he's winning. He turned that program around in 1 year. They went 11-1 or whatever. Went to the SWAC championship game where they were beat by a team with a worse record. No hate on Deion, but I'm bringing this up because before Deion became a head coach, he was on the NFL Network. Deion said at least one time, he said that he didn't want to go. He said he reached out to the Atlanta Falcons. He wanted to be a head coach, but he said he had no interest in being a position coach. And I just don't think it works like that in the NFL, that a team is an ownership group is going to jump out there with a first-time head coach with no track record, no history of coaching whatsoever. Conversely, that has happened over in the NBA with Steve Kerr. I believe it might have happened with Mark Jackson, maybe. But that's a completely different type of Steve Nash did it too for the Brooklyn Nets right now. But that's a completely different type of coaching than what goes on in the NFL. We're talking about a 53-man roster versus, a 15-person roster in the NBA. And then with the NBA, all you do is you more or less just manage personalities. And then, you do have to come in and manage the clock before the half and at the end of the game. Completely different dynamic, in my opinion. But Deion Sanders was like, while he was on the NFL Network, was like, I don't need to go be a position coach. I know right now I can go in here and coach this team and get W's. And Atlanta never took him up on his offer. And I just, like I said, I don't think that was reasonable to think that in the NFL, you're not going to have to go and be a linebacker coach for a couple of years. You're not going to have to coach the DBs for a couple of years, then move from the DBs to the defensive coordinator for a couple of years. And then you get enough history that you can go and try to get you a head coaching job. I just think that's kind of the natural progression over there. The very last thing that I'll talk about, I thought it was unfortunate for former ESPN personality Michael Smith. I talked about this a couple of months ago. He went to talk about how Mike Shanahan is overrated and he's only getting to coach because of his last name. Not Mike Shanahan, that was the father. The Shanahan, the young Shanahan that's out there for the 49ers. I can't think of my man's first name. But how can you sit here and say that Shanahan, he's only benefiting from nepotism because his father was a head coach and a Super Bowl winning head coach? How can you say that when the man is constantly in the playoffs? And right now, we just saw he went in and got an upset victory on the road against the Cowboys. And then you go out here and say that the man can't really coach. He had a phenomenal season with RG3. He was the offensive coordinator when Atlanta went to the Super Bowl. How can you say this man is only getting the opportunity because of his last name when you can look at his history and see where his the offenses that he's been the coordinator of, they finished in the top of the league. He's taken teams to the playoffs. He's taken teams to the conference championship game. He's taken teams to the Super Bowl. And now here as a head coach, his teams are generally winning. So again, this whole thing just gets messy when depending on who you listen to. That's just my opinion on it. I think it's unfortunate because again, it's a lot of people out here actually doing the work. While people just sit back and complain and say that things, are terrible or they're not fair or it's racist, it's people that have to do the jobs. It's people that have been trying to do the jobs for, they've devoted 20 to 25 years of their lives to doing the job. And yeah, maybe things haven't worked out as they would like them to be. Maybe they weren't treated fairly, but that happens every day to all of us. So lastly, there's an article right now over on The Undefeated, ESPN.com. It's by a writer named Pat Groata. And he's actually talking about, it's two over there. William Roden, who used to be on ESPN, who wrote the book $40 Million Slaves. He's got a piece on there about black coaches in the NFL, kind of saying what he's already said. But there's another one, the one by Pat Groata is about NBA coaches or former NBA players coaching at HBCUs. And I want to say the main person that he's talking about is Daryl. Damn, I can't even remember if his name is Daryl Walker or Daryl Armstrong. But check it out. I think, again, if we're going to run out here talking about what's not happening and why things aren't happening, I want to hear from the horse's mouth. I don't want to hear some person who talks about one subject 364 days out of the year, and then on Black Monday when NFL coaches are fired, then you come over here and you want to go all in about the NFL, but you never talk about the NFL. Then when the coaches get hired, and whether it's 3 brothers that are hired or it's 7 brothers are hired, that same reporter never comes back and talks about who was hired and why they were hired. So you never talking about the positives in anything or the progress in anything. You constantly just talking about what's not happening, what hasn't happened. And you don't even know what the hell you're talking about. That's the end of my lunch. My name is Wood. Like I said, I'm going to go into it. I wrote some notes that I'm going to get into a little bit more thoroughly on the next It's Always Personal podcast. On here, I just kind of come in and talk about what's on my mind, on my lunch break. Pay me no mind. You don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. Peace.